Hello and welcome to the Nano Film Improv podcast. I'm Dave Heron. This podcast is about my trials and tribulations associated with improv comedy and doing it, performing it, rehearsing it. So this is really a cathartic outpouring of the things that I've learned, the things that I'm struggling with, and an opportunity to share with you and hear from you also some of the things that have worked for you, and equally there'll be some things on this podcast that you have tried that don't work for you. It's all very subjective. My experience level is, well, I've had a few years experience doing improv. I've taught a bit of improv. I've performed with a whole range of exciting and talented improvisers and learnt from sets that have gone well and sets that haven't gone well. And this is all part of an evolution for me as well. So you're very welcome in joining me on this podcast. So this week I want to talk about mental burnout from doing improv. So this is about burning yourself out from doing too much improv, and that could be workshops, classes, courses, jams, shows, you name it. And this happened to me a couple of years ago where I was just doing too much. I was really enjoying it, but it did reach a bit of a tipping point, and in fact went over the tipping point into becoming a burden. And I remember it was about November, the start of November, and already I'd booked a gig in for the 10th of December. And already at the start of November, I just couldn't wait to get this gig done in December. And I had a lot of stuff improv-wise before then, and I was just looking forward to getting that box ticked, essentially, on the 10th of December, and then having a break for 4 to 6 weeks into the new year. And that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like a burden. It felt like I had committed to something. I had to see it through, but it wasn't enjoyable. It wasn't a good place to be, and was in fact having an impact on my enjoyment and fulfillment that I had originally got by doing improv. Now, I think there are two main drivers for how I got myself into this situation, and I should argue I'm in a lot better place now with organising myself with respect to improv, and every time I do it, I'm very, very happy. But there are two main drivers for what got me into that situation. The first of those was bad organisation on my part. I had essentially overcommitted myself to doing too much improv. I was in a number of groups, which was very nice and very flattering, but I felt very committed to those groups. So of course that meant rehearsals, that meant shows, that meant still doing a course. I think I was doing a 6 to 8 week course at the time anyway with Hoopla in London. It also meant I was still doing workshops every week. So a typical week could end up being 2 to 3, and in some cases 4 nights of improv a week, because simply I hadn't organised myself diary-wise. Now, of course, that's in addition to having a full-time job, a family, other responsibilities, volunteering and doing other bits and pieces as well. It took a real toll on me, to the point that it wasn't enjoyable, and I just needed some nights off. And if I looked at my diary, and for those people who know me well, know that I have a nice big paper diary, just so I can see all of the days of the month. And then when I looked at that diary, there were barely any gaps at all. And that's something else I found out about myself. In a post-COVID lockdown world, so after sort of 2021-ish, I found myself getting a lot more anxiety than possibly I had done prior to COVID. And now it's very important for me to have nights off where I'm not going out, either locally or up in London or elsewhere. I need to have downtime, and not just one night. I need to have a sort of 2 or 3 nights where I know that I'm not going to be doing anything and I can just settle into my own rhythm at home. But clearly diary management was a very bad thing, and I had not planned effectively, or I thought it was something I could do, but in fact it had just become a burden of fulfilling obligations to people, to venues, to rehearsal space, etc. And so it was at a time when my mental health was really challenged, all brought on by taking on too much improv. So when the festive season came, it was like an almighty relief. I had fulfilled all my obligations and I could take some time away from improv, recharge, have some time away from work at home, spend time with the people that matter most to me. And then I was able to come back in the new year feeling quite refreshed, actually, recharged, and with a sort of new lease of life of things that I wanted to do with improv. And of course, that was the beauty about having the downtime, is I actually got time to think about the kind of things I wanted to do. It wasn't necessarily just going and doing the improv, it was actually taking time out to be mindful, thinking about the wider aspects I wanted to develop in improv, actually what sort of styles that I want to go after, what sort of courses I might want to do or not do. And that was another big thing as well. I actually had to stop myself from booking myself onto courses because I just made a commitment that in the new year I was going to have more diary space and do more improv where I was enjoying it rather than seeing it as work. And that latter point probably leads into the second driver of how I got myself into this situation. I had committed to doing a lot of gigs, courses, workshops, where it was development and focus on new styles, new techniques and tricks, and ways of doing certain types of improv, which was great, but in moderation. And I wasn't getting the balance between work, development of improv, and simply having fun. I was doing too many sets where I felt that I was working in my head a lot and not just enjoying the improv and enjoying naturally the scenes and connections that I was doing with people. It was just work and just felt like a burden. And so one of the drivers I realized was that I need to be doing improv where I get a balance. And in my mind, it feels like the balance between total playfulness and focus on theory and development is kind of 70-30 in favor of playfulness. Now, of course, the two are not mutually exclusive, but I had spent too much of my time focusing and critiquing myself and doing improv courses where I wasn't very good at the things and just had to sort of work my way through them. It wasn't fun. And so the second driver really was to redress that and make sure that almost all of the improv that I was doing was going to be fun. And that made me have to make some tough choices. I was in some groups where I had to kind of step away from them. And that's not because I didn't like the people. I loved all the people I was performing with. But I've realized that it's important for me to do improv with people with whom I have a deep connection with and have a same sense of humor. So the groups I were in were lovely. We had a lot of fun, but it was more at the time, I think I was joining groups because people were asking me to join them, and it was very flattering, and I was very honored to be part of these groups at the time. But I also needed to take time away from myself to go, actually, I want to do now improv with people that I have a deeper connection with, that I know really well. In short, doing improv with my mates. And that's where recently I have found a lot of fun, a lot of pleasure, and it's no longer a burden because I'm now doing improv with people where the balance is redressed. I'm doing improv mainly with my mates, but I'm also spending time where I can now pick and choose certain courses that I want to do. Now, as listeners of the podcast will know, my current area of development that I want to go into is musical and hip hop improv. So I'll be looking for courses to go and do that, no doubt. But again, I was looking up a course recently with the wonderful Dreamweaver Quartet, and they were running a course up in London. But unfortunately, the time there was between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night on a weekday night. That's too late for me. Now, in the past, I would have done that. But again, that would have produced some level of anxiety with me, knowing I would be getting late back from work, or indeed having to hang around after work, and then having to do the course, and then having to come back. Again, with people that I didn't necessarily know either. So trying to just get the balance right, again, between having fun, but also making sure I'm still learning and developing in the sessions and all the workshops and courses that I do is still very important to me as well. So that's led me to a point now where I feel more proactive diary management makes me feel more comfortable. I can plan out courses well in advance. I can think about the things that I want to do. And that also leaves me with that freedom that should a course like a TJ and Dave come up once in a while, or a Liz Allen, one of these ones that I've been very lucky to take part in, should they come up once in a while and I've got the freedom because of my diary to go and join them, then I can do. And then combined with that, making sure, as I've said before, that I now do improv where the balance is mainly in the fun, playfulness, just having some belly laughs with my mates, but also allowing myself periodically to do stuff where it's slightly out of my comfort zone, or it's with people that I haven't performed with before, somewhere where I'm developing myself and still keeping that level of interest pushing through too. Have you ever had burnout with improv? Have you experienced this too? What are the things that you've done to try and counteract that? How have you talked to people about it? What sort of things have worked for you to get yourself out of the rut? I'd be really keen to know how you've dealt with these challenges before too. So thanks very much for listening to the Nano Film Improv podcast, and I'll catch you in the next one.